Welcome to this special episode of This Wasn't in the Manual. This month, we'll be reflecting on grief and how losing my mum during the pandemic has shaped us.
This is a personal and emotional topic, but it's one that we think is important to share. Let's celebrate her life and the legacy she left behind. All right, Mommy.
It's okay.
So, losing grandmom was already painful as is, but losing her during COVID-19 really just changed everything. What was the hardest part about grieving in a world that was completely shut down?
The hardest part, as if losing your mother isn't enough, was that COVID-19 took us away from giving a great woman a great send-off and also not being able to see her, being denied the ability to lay your eyes on them for the last time. The last time I saw my mum was when I took her in the wheelchair to the hospital because she was having problems breathing. That's been the hardest part, and even with all these years past, that still does kind of torment me.
Yeah, I really, just thinking back on that time period, just the uncertainty of everything. Like, there was just no way we would have known that moment,
The world had no
the
idea what was
world,
going on.
exactly. And, you know, so many people didn't get to say their proper goodbyes during the pandemic. Um, if you had one more moment with grandmom, what's one thing you wish you could have said?
You know what I am grateful for is that I let her know every single day that I loved her. I wrote a special song for her, if you remember, called Thank You, Mama. So everything I wanted to tell her, I, I'm grateful I actually got to do. We shared so much. I think it's more about what we would have done than what I would have said. Um, yeah, because she knew, revocably, I loved her. I said it every morning, every noon, every night. She was my best friend. So I'm at peace with, I've said everything that I needed to say to her.
Mm, yeah, I'm glad you guys used to talk so much.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we
You
did.
did. That was
Mm-hmm.
definitely something that, I truly see um, being something that could bring you peace,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just having those conversations to rely on.
Yep.
Um, grief is a very, those that know it know, grief is a very
Mm-hmm.
isolating feeling. And, I don't know what it's like to, not have my mother. And I can only imagine like the range of emotions that come with that, but
Mm-hmm.
especially during the lockdown and during COVID, it was magnified. Um,
Mm.
how did you cope with like the loneliness of loss?
You know, the amazing thing is, really, I had you. I had you because a lot of people may not realize I lost your brother before that. So I was still in that bubble of grief, bewildered, um, almost like in a no man land. It's like, it's so surreal. And it was lonely. I never really thought about, I mean, now that you've asked that question, you go through that alone, but I felt very much alone. I come from a large family, siblings, nephews, nieces, we have a large family. Um, I have some really close friends, but I did feel very alone in that moment. But you were right there by my side, and that helped me cope. And of course, the ultimate is my faith. I never questioned God. I wasn't mad at God. I just wanted to understand, like, how, because the way that your grandmother went still doesn't make sense. You know, she was meant to come home. Spoke to her that weekend. She didn't have COVID. She went in, supposedly has COVID, was transferred to a ward, um, and wasn't told, and we weren't told. So all those series of events, those things still play havoc with me. They do.
Yeah. I'll I'll never forget thinking like if we never snuck that phone in with her.
Oh, listen, I'm grateful for that every day, because if she never had that phone, we'd be none the wiser to so much. We know so much more because of that phone. All those conspiracy theories and things, we'll talk about that one day in more
And we cleaned
depth.
that phone down.
Yep.
Like it was like we just knew to like clean it down, sanitize it, send it off. Because we already had like sanitizer and things in the house because
True.
of grandmom's aftercare for like,
It's generally that's how she
yeah.
was, yeah.
So like I just remember none of it making sense. Like us not being able to see them, but they were sending in camera crews into hospitals
Yeah.
to shoot documentaries
Yeah.
during the height of COVID. And then, like you said, like just the random changes and the lack of notifying her not being able to have her medication.
Mm-hmm. Them lying
Like
about it. She
her not
had a
eating for
medication,
several days.
not eating, me sending food, and them telling me she has her food. Um, okay, she has her food, but I spoke to my mum on the phone
Right.
and she hadn't received it. Oh, they've lost her medication. Oh, they can't find her things
Right.
that,
Right. That
and
she came in with.
but when she passed away, I was able to retrieve those things that they said were lost. Those things, her saying to me, I think they're trying to kill me. Those things still haunt me. I still have the voicemails. The nurse being in her room wanting to give her a diabetic shot, and she didn't have diabetes, and her putting the phone on speaker, me saying, well, tell the nurse, let me speak to the nurse. The nurse didn't want to come to the phone. I said, have you looked in her medical notes? Your grandmom had her faculties about her, very, very about her wits. She knows every medication, the pros and cons of all of them. Saying to that nurse, why don't you look in the medical notes to see if you've got the right patient for diabetes? And then she just goes mute. She doesn't want to talk. What injection was she planning to give? The fact that when I spoke to the consultant at 7 o'clock in the morning, it was documented that they checked on her and her vitals were fine, everything was fine. And between 7:15 and 7:30 a.m., so that's 15 to 30 minutes later, she's gone. We don't know what to say. So yeah, there's that's it's not a fully closed casket, and also not. It's like I asked, can you send us pictures then to verify that it is her? We've got the funeral home going with the box, but we're not. It has to be a closed casket, sealed. So I don't even know if the woman the casket that we laid in the ground, that your grandmother is in it. I have to take their word for it. I don't know why it was difficult to take pictures. They take forensic pictures all the time. So you have to put that body in the casket. Where's my mom? Anyway, talking about that, funerals and traditions are such a big part of how we honor our loved ones. and COVID clearly took that away. How did not having a proper send off for grandmum affect the way you processed her passing?
It in a way it made it so that this whole ordeal really wasn't concrete. Um, it still feels like some type of a robbery, and like you said, it's like you never really get to close the casket for real because we like we were robbed of like a tradition, like growing up, I remember, grandma being the first person to make sure that anybody got their proper send off, distant family member, whoever. And there is just like a certain tradition and a culture and a pride that you take in celebrating.
The life of the departed.
Yeah, it just feels like we were robbed of that.
Yeah.
Like, no, like, and she's our matriarch,
She is.
nobody knows where to really leave off with that, nobody's doing the 9-9, nobody's doing like, and it was at such a fragile time for everybody, everyone's still recovering from that, like I don't even know if our family is even like,
if they've been the same since.
Yeah. Like it's just one of those things that, you don't even realize how meaningful of a tradition it truly, truly is until you're just not able to do it. Like
the lives that she touched, the amount of people that wanted to be able to
oh
pay
my
their
God,
respects.
that would have been like
listen, she was our
would
queen.
have
She was the
been
original queen mom. So,
crazy.
she would have had, we'd already talked about it. I even talked about it with her, She was going to be drawn in a horse and carriage, 6 white horses, and, a glass coach. We talked about it. She used to say, well, don't worry, I'm not going to go before the Queen gives me my 100-year letter. And, she felt a kinship to Her Majesty because their birthdays are in the same, I think they're a day apart, and they're the same age. But yeah, that's been the hardest for sure. Do you think the grief from that time still lingers because we never got full closure? And have you tried to find your own version of closure?
Yeah, I think, you know, that whole experience aligns with feeling like an incomplete process, an incomplete situation. So it leaves a void. It's already a big enough void that, she's not physically here with us.
Yeah.
But not being able to be be in ceremony with her, it really is something that I've just never been okay with. Like, she deserved to have us all there. We would have all been there.
For sure.
There would have been there would have been no way, even if it was sudden, even if it was a moment that we couldn't have predicted or prepared for.
Yeah.
We would have all been there in ceremony with her. And I guess the way that I try to find closure is by just knowing that she was so great of a woman that her crossover was seamless.
Yeah.
It was ceremonial in its own way. Like, you know, it was, she got what she deserved
Yeah.
in her own right. And I tried to look at it as like, we missed out. We weren't there to get the crossover because there's just no way.
I was gonna. Yeah. I mean, grief isn't just about death. It's also about losing time. It's about losing connection. Um, what's something COVID stole from you that you're still trying to reclaim?
Just my confidence, in my decision making. There's just been moments of very valid and high levels of doubt. And, you know, life was already hard pre COVID. And, COVID just really amplified areas of everyone's lives where they wanted either change, they probably didn't realize they needed to change and now want to change, or things they want to unlearn. So we were all kind of just thrown into this, cocoon of introspection and reflection. And so what I'm trying to get, I know that that's inherently a good thing, but I feel like I was robbed of a bit of my confidence. So, with practice comes confidence. So I know that it's just ultimately me just getting back into the swing of a few things. But yeah, that's the main thing.
She was your
I was
cheerleader.
gonna say, I was just thinking about her and Bakari. I'm like,
Yeah.
those two, more than anybody,
Yeah.
were always like just down for whatever I was down for.
Yeah.
And it paid it paid off,
Yeah.
and then it felt like there was a decline, after COVID, after everything, after that whole time frame. But, you know, we just keep pushing on.
Yeah.
You know, so many people lost loved ones. It wasn't just us. In that time frame, that pandemic was hard for everybody. Um, people, when I think about people just being alone, passing away alone in hospital rooms and
Mm-hmm.
in their homes, you know,
No
when
family.
no family around. And these are
Mm-hmm.
people that were loved, people that came from, you know, like lineage, and so I was gonna ask you, like, how do you think we should go about finding peace, or, finding ways to make peace with grandmom's, physical absence?
That's it's difficult.
And not
Uh,
even just her physical absence, like just the way it happened as well.
yeah. The truth, I'm not at peace with how it happened. I don't know that I'll ever be at peace with that how it happened. Because, like you said, I mean, death comes regardless. I mean, and it's not age, it's not health. I mean, your brother was only 21. But with your grandmom, how I cope now, the peace that I have has nothing to do with what it was. COVID-19 is hard to come to terms with, but that I lived with intention with your grandmother. So we did things together. In fact, before that, we just got back from Sierra Leone. Um, I took her with me wherever I could, whenever I could. Even when I was touring, she came with me. The role that she played in you and your brother's life, and her coming to America as many times as she did, and seeing your brother's daughter, and then coming back after he passed to see his son. We did a lot, and I have that to always reflect on. For anybody else that's going through this, I can't even imagine. What I would say to them is you have to revisit the good times. You have to hold on to those. Um, you can't go through the shoulda, woulda, couldas. Because I went through a phase of thinking, if only I didn't take her in the wheelchair, if I didn't take her to the hospital. Um, and I actually struggled with a bit of guilt for a while, thinking that it was my fault. I shouldn't have taken her. I know that's not. I know that's not true. I know that if she heard me say that, she'd have something to say. Just a minute, but um, yeah, my piece is just remembering everything that we've done and being grateful for that. Remembering things that she said, lessons that she taught me, um, and the relationship I have with you is a reflection of the relationship I had with her because we were pretty close, and I think it allows you and I to be closer too and to make more memories as I did with my mom. So that's what gives me peace, and that's what I would encourage you to do. But how do you, likewise, how do you make peace with how she went? And
I I have this deep knowing that she's with me,
hmm,
and it almost it gets real actual factual sometimes for me.
right,
I can get a bit skeptical. I've always been spiritual. I've always had things that have happened in my life throughout my
true,
life that as I've gotten older, I think I've just tried to, you know,
yeah,
not dumb it down, but just not lean too much into it
yeah,
for the sake of not deluding myself.
hmm,
There have been some moments where I'm just like, this is undeniable. Like I can hear it. Like the other day, I was making okra soup,
yes.
and
You made that to perfection. I'm sorry. I mean, I love your cooking anyway, and it's not to come with. Seriously, I know what you're gonna say, and I felt it. I felt like you and your grandma were in that kitchen cooking up a storm.
I could hear her voice
Mm,
loud and clear, like, and sometimes it's never full sentences, like
mm,
it's just like phrases of her, and it just becomes it's like it's again, if it's a coping mechanism, I'll
mm,
be down to admit that, but
mm,
it feels
real.
too, too real, too
Mm,
present, too specific. It's not all the time, you know. There's times when she's super close to me, and there's times where she's not as close.
mm,
Maybe she's off with the other cousins or like the other
mm.
kids, the other,
Yeah. Mm.
doing her.
Certainly enough of you.
There's too many. There's so many of
Do you
us.
know, I counted because in her lifetime, she really enjoyed that. I did her lineage just from
Mm,
her five children, us five, our children, our children's children, and there was a total of 95 of us.
wow.
95. children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, and great great. And she lived to see 4 generations. These are the things that I draw comfort from. But since then, some of your cousins have
Have
had.
had, yeah.
So I think we're over 100 now
Crazy.
of her lineage.
Crazy. All
Oh,
from her womb.
all from her. All from her.
You know, if we could go back and rewrite the way we honored grandmom during that time, what would we do differently?
Gosh, I'm so grateful. Because again, we were able to do her 90th birthday. Like God knew. And that was a battle of to do or not to do. But I believe to do. So we celebrated her.
But I'm saying, like, if we could go back and rewrite the way that we honored her
Okay, and saying
during
goodbye
that
at that
time,
time.
what would we do differently?
She would have had the send off of a king or queen, because that's what she was. All the people whose lives she touched, people that became doctors, midwives, nurses, attorneys because of her, people that came into London in the 60s and came to her as a safe place, people that she helped get into housing, get into jobs. They would have all been there to celebrate her life and to honor her. There would have been singing and dancing. There would have been a celebration, not just mourning, because we know she would have had to have gone at some point. It was just before her 92nd birthday. So that's what we would have done to honor her. You would have been singing because she loved to hear you sing. And her grandchildren, they're all talented. They all have gifts and arts. I would have had the artists in the family. Cousin I should do a portrait to have her just have this big, and I still want her to do that. The ones that cook, have them all cook. Those that sing, perform, dance. If I could go back to that time and rewrite how we said goodbye and honored her, that's what I would have loved to have done. But with all of her grandchildren, those in Sierra Leone too, and her brother, the last of that generation. If we could go back and rewrite that, though, how would you like to honor your grandma?
Well, if it was during the time of the pandemic and like everything was still in lockdown, um, this is gonna sound a little crazy.
You'd have broke the law.
I would have broke the law.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I would have broke the law.
Mm-hmm.
I would have, in hindsight, seeing what I've, you know, doing the research that I've done myself and just gathering my own opinion. I would have broke the rules. I would have told our family not to be so careful. I would have broke into that hospital like I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I would have been with her. I would have just been with her. I would have found a way.
We would have found a way to
I
get her
would,
out.
yeah,
I
I
think
would
we
have
would have
just
taken her out.
broken the rules, brought her back. Just if that's what the time was going to call for, anyways, I just would have broken the rules and gone and got her and allowed her to just be home with us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
You know?
Yeah. You know, grief never truly leaves us, but neither do the memories. That's what we hold on to. And next month, we're going to continue this conversation with grief, but remembering your brother.
Yes. Well, until that time comes, keep in mind, this wasn't in the manual.
No, it wasn't.
So just embrace your curiosity, embrace the journey, and keep on moving.
Keep exploring. Until the next time. I love you.
Love you too.